behind closed doors.
I read, following Obama's victory, his election a year ago, that you said it was necessary for America to not follow the footsteps of the Roman Empire. It's been 1 year since he's been elected. Do you feel that his leadership has changed America's trajectory in any way?
I don't know Mr. Obama personally, so I can't make personal attacks about who he is and his character as a man. I've never sat down and had a conversation with him. But if I examine his foreign policy and I see that really the mission hasn't changed that much, that we've diverted troops from Iraq and then put them back into Afghanistan, that our troop strength there is almost equal to the amount of troops that the Russians had during the height of their occupation, that in fact when I went to Afghanistan, people were more resentful towards Americans than they were towards the legacy of Russia, even though that occupation was a lot more violent. And I think that's where I would kind of begin to really get into what I think about Obama, that if you look at it, what has really changed? You know, that fact that he got a Nobel Peace Prize, I don't think is indicative of change. I think that's the left of Europe putting pressure on him and saying, hey, you know what? You know, your generals that are obviously bought by the right wing can put pressure on you in this way and release reports that say you must send more troops to Afghanistan, otherwise we're going to fail. And what kind of position does that put Obama in? It puts him in a position that he looks weak to the right and weak to the left by not sending more troops in when he's taking advice from the same people that were supposed to give George Bush advice that he didn't listen to about Iraq. So what's their response? We're going to give you a Nobel Peace Prize. Now how the do you look sending 30,000 more troops and God knows how many mercenaries into that country?
How did you end up fusing this passion that you have and this deep knowledge with your music? How did that come together? Because
I feel like our people would benefit from understanding that a little bit more about themselves. Because I wanted to know the origin of things. I wanted to know how we became a Christian nation. I even wanted to know how the people of Russia initially became a Christian nation. And then I discovered, okay, well, the Byzantine Emperor Basil II, he was at war with the Bulgars, and he went to Vladimir I, and he said, hey, I'll give you my daughter Anna if you Christianize your people. And Vladimir, being the intelligent Vladimir of Kiev that he was, said, hey, you know what? I've researched all of these other religions. None of them consolidates power the way this one does. And because we both share an area near the same sea, and we can both use each other, I'll even send you 6,000 of my Varangians, and we'll call it a day. Deal done. But it explains a lot of how religion and how politics work in conjunction with one another. It explains how peoples are unified by the same cause, and how sometimes, whether we choose to realize it or not, we have more things in common than we do apart. We all want the same things, and yet there are people who are in charge of our government who aren't satisfied with us wanting the same things. And by the same things, I don't mean the same shirt to wear. I don't mean the American exaggeration of what socialism or communism is. I don't believe that we should give in to one standard or another. I think it should be measured based upon what a population decides and not have some controlling interest from a foreign country or a foreign corporation, because all corporations are foreign, really. They deal with a small, tiny island nation of people who decide things for others. I grew this passion because of that desire to make a connection between one and the other. And the more it became clearer and clearer how one affected the other, the more I decided to dig deeper and deeper into it. And I love when I'm proved wrong, and I love putting my ideas out there and having them debated, because I feel like it gives me a chance to grow personally as well.
You have been offered to sign with labels a few times, a couple of times, and thus far you have not signed with any big labels that many would consider a very lucrative opportunity. How come you don't want to sign on with any labels?
I think that they would take the creative control completely out of my hands. I want to let people know what a record label is. A record label is a loan with horrible interest rates, where you don't even get to keep the property. You know, you don't get to keep your masters or your publishing. The majority of the time it's snatched out of your hands. You deliver a product of about 25 songs and they pick 12 or 14 of them, and then they decide to create a marketing image around who you are. And I think that that's disingenuous. For me personally. For other people, they don't have a problem doing that because they see it as an actor would, or they see it as a stage performer would. I was born a revolutionary, and that's what I'm going to be to the day that I die. I see the reality, and I see the sacrifice that's needed for it, and that's what I remind people about. And that's why I go to the places that I've gone to. That's why I'm in North Africa. That's why I go to Colombia. You know what I mean? That's why I've been to Afghanistan. That's why I go to these places and I set up foundations to try and help these people that are victims of an occupation. Not because I share or pledge allegiance to one ideology over another. It's specifically because I don't want my politics controlled by somebody else. And also, to be quite honest, I'm making a lot more money independently than I would getting 13 cents a record.
What's next for your music?
I'm working on a new album called The Middle Passage. And I'm also working on a documentary called Urban Warfare, which details the rise of how I actually made it independently, what sacrifices I had to personally make, my travels around the world. I recently used the proceeds of the Third World album, the last one I did, to build an orphanage and a school in Kabul, and I went there myself to actually set it up, which is where I encountered all of these experiences. I, as a human being, have certain limitations on what I can do, but I think that I dedicate all that I have to revolutionary music and to the study of overturning an unjust system in the search for something better.
Immortal Technique, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me here. До свидания.